I get to welcome up Scott Glosserman, who is the founder and CEO of GATHR. And GATHR brings together the best aspects of in real life, IRL, virtual and hybrid content creation and event management, or event creation and event management, while providing online the benefits of a talent and booking agency. Scott has also directed, written, and produced films and documentaries under his banner, Glen Echo Entertainment. And in 2015, he was a finalist for the Ivy Innovator Award. Scott founded GATHR Foundation, a grant-giving foundation, and GATHR Work in Ipswich, hope I'm saying that right, Massachusetts, a collaborative co-working and event space. He also founded Docutegrity, an organization that rates accuracy in documentaries, and historical fiction for TV and feature films. His career started, I can't believe you want to say this, but I'm going to say it. His career started at CAA, Creative Artists Agency, as an assistant to the head of Motion Picture Talent Department. Do you know what that means, people? He has been through boot camp and back again, because I know a lot of people who worked for agencies. So I'd love to welcome up Scott. I'll sit here.
That's it. Much younger self.
No, you know what? I look exactly like mine. What Photoshop? What sleep did I have then? Filters.
I'm really excited to be reacquainting with some people here and just to be able to speak amongst such an esteemed group of folks like you. So thank you very much for having me.
You bet. Well, the first thing I would love to hear is I saw a pretty incendiary post on LinkedIn that you reposted on self-distribution.
Right.
And I really liked it because basically it said, don't ever say self-distribution again. So I would love to hear from you, A, what has been thought of traditionally as self-distribution, and B, why that is not something that we want to start saying.
Okay. Well, many of us in the independent and documentary film distribution space have thought of what we call self-distribution or DIY as something that makes us feel small and bespoke, and it really doesn't serve us well. It's part of a vestigial way of distributing when all other options were closed to us. And as a last resort, we did it DIY. And really, when people, quote, self-distribute, actually the post was arguing just to call it hybrid, but I don't even think hybrid really does it justice either. It's just distribution. There are components of distribution for basically all films. You could go and book the Angelica tomorrow with a booker. It's that self-distribution. You're going to give yourself, you're going to buy a perception of value, create some symbolic prestige, and then eventually, wherever your journey takes you, you'll probably get on Amazon, maybe through an aggregator. So that's not self-distribution. You're finally on a global streaming platform. So this period where there's what we would call DIY or self-distribution is really just a window. It's a part of your distribution journey. So why call it out and some of us think stigmatize it? And so that kind of dovetails into what we're trying to do. We're creating our own moniker. We're a direct-to-audience window. And this direct-to-audience window we can wedge in between your theatrical, because theatrical is still that momentum, especially if you have P&A, prints and advertising, that momentum is going to create the symbolic prestige, hopefully drive some revenue, validate the film, help you with all of your in-kind and your thrust for all of your ancillary modalities. But before you then get to the rest of the journey, we're trying to carve out a direct-to-audience window, and I can explain what that is.
Yeah, well, exactly, because that's what I wanted to know about. And just so you all know, I mean, what Scott and I talk about a lot is how, especially social impact entertainment films, don't necessarily have to be your Marvel movies. In fact, they that's probably not the best use of them. What is probably the best use of them is this type of targeted, what I would have said, targeted distribution before we started talking. And now I'm changing my language to direct to audience, which I really like, because what that does is it takes away stigmatization. I feel like targeted means it's also small. Whereas direct to audience, you're finding the right audience, that right 25%. Right out of the gate to start that movement. Am I saying that right for direct audience? Because I love this term.
You are, and it's kind of a play on DTC, direct to consumer. For storytellers, it's DTA, it's direct to audience. And
gotta love an acronym.
And we're and DTC had some trouble getting started. There wasn't a lot of sex appeal to it. Nike's and Foot Locker, but Allbirds comes along, and as you see these DTC brands, especially through Goldbelly and DoorDash, ghost kitchens and restaurants that all of a sudden become popular, but they don't have any brick and mortar. The direct to consumer, especially with TikTok and Instagram, it becomes something that is ubiquitous, and you don't need the validation of a mall or IKEA to validate you. Similarly, in film, let's try it with DTA. If there are now, technology has now caught up, and it's not just Gather. There's all sorts of different platforms through which storytellers can facilitate direct to audience distribution channels, and through the alliances. And the prestige of the filmmakers themselves, and certainly their compatriots, the foundations and others who support them, they can validate the film, and so that's what's so exciting, because maybe 10 years ago we were having this exact same conversation, and then the golden age of documentary acquisitions happened when the streamers came in, and we've kind of put this conversation, this existential threat to distribution on pause. Now we're kind of right back where we left off. Only 10 years later, people are realizing, my Amazon or my Apple debut isn't as sexy as maybe I thought it was going to be. I get no data. I only get paid 30 days after the close of quarter. That's not fast enough for me to cash flow that money and reinvest it into marketing. So, but now there's all of these great ways that I can facilitate my own distribution. I've already got my own community. If I could monetize that, I'm going to drive better economics. I'm going to drive more data, consumer data insights that have been lost through the disintermediation, going all the way back to the Paramount consent decrees when the exhibitors and the studios were broken up. So that barrier has been there, and now finally we're removing the barrier between storytellers and their audiences, and that's where the tech platform gets in ticketing, which we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've never heard the analogy. I like that of the mall, and how the mall is not necessarily relevant anymore as blessing any sort of content, blessing the stores or the brands. That brands are going straight to it, and then that's the same with what you're doing. That's a really interesting way of connecting the two, because I just read today that in dailies, if you get that newsletter, that late night talk shows, of course, are declining, as are celebrity appearances on them from an importance perspective. Hot Ones, if anybody knows Hot Ones, right? The hot sauce, that is actually where you're getting 86% of engagement with celebrities before the launch of their films. Hot Ones, a guy who makes people eat hot sauce. That is winning. And not just winning, crushing late night talk shows where the celebrities used to come and do that. And so to your point, that is far more direct to consumer, direct to audience, just using that. And then YouTube has surpassed TV streaming minutes of Disney this year. And it's right next to Netflix. So YouTube is crushing it. So you've got these really interesting things. And to your point too, you could just book an AMC theater. I could book an AMC theater today to, if somebody wants to give me money, I could do that. But you can do that. And so that's nice. I can do these things. They're all possible. But now I'll ask you, how do I get those tickets sold?
Right. So many things to unpack here. So
And you can't go back to the history of whatever the paramount decree was back in Roman times.
No,
I don't understand that
We'll
part.
leave that where it is. I will just say that some of these late night
I need to
shows
do some research.
are really also their bits are being watched more on social media than on TV.
Yeah.
So what we've done from a technology platform standpoint, what we have done for many years is to combine the exhibition or the event itself, the film booking with ticketing. And I want to directly answer your question.
Yeah.
But,
well, how do we get those tickets sold? So if everyone here, if we all decided, okay, we can go direct to consumer, direct to audience, we're going to get some theaters, we're going to show our film. How do we get anybody in it?
So let me go. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to talk about the tech piece because
Yeah.
what's missing. Just we're setting the table.
Yes.
And going to get to how do we get people to see it. But before, I just want to underscore how important it is to have the audience data, and this is critical, especially for impact storytelling, because how do we drive and measure impact? Well, it's not easy if you're not selling the tickets, because if you're not selling tickets, you don't have the email addresses, you can't re-engage. When you do have the email addresses, however, and you send an email like we've been doing this last couple weeks, we've got a movie called The Sixth, which is Sean and Andrea Fine's incredible historical document of the incident January 6th. We are emailing attendees. The film ends at 8:45. There's an email that goes out at 8:45, and they open the email, and here are the impact objectives. Here are the things that you can do. And I mean, when I saw Blackfish, I mean, that didn't need help. That was a great film. The stock price dipped over a year as a result of that. We could measure that because Blackfish was ubiquitous. But I would have done anything after that film if somebody asked me to do something. But there was no impact initiative. There's no re-engagement. We see now typical re-engagement emails, click-through rates are between 3 and 6% across all industry. The CTR, the click-through rate that we get when we send these emails out when the film is over, is between 30 and 40%. And this week it's been 38% for these sixth screenings. And it could be anything, because the people who are watching it are either people who are into the issues and bringing other people and trying to recruit them into this. But there's also, when you have the consumer data and you're able to re-engage, the organizations, the foundations, the storytellers, everybody behind this film, they're going to get the access to the audience data. So it's not just about driving better economics, it's about recruiting membership for your organization, because now you have the consumer data, you can re-engage, and it's about driving and measuring the impact. So before we get into the marketing, it's really important that your direct-to-audience window includes a direct relationship with your audience. That's the whole point. And you're not going to get any of that data from any global streamers or anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So on the marketing side, should I pause?
No, that's good, because I like the way you retreaded on how and why the engagement matters, because I do think that's a big piece of it. Because you're right, I've watched films and I immediately want to do something, and there's nothing to do, or there's nowhere to contact. And I think that's where the action campaigns come in. That's where the NGOs part come in, the programs come in. So I'm glad you started there. But now you can go to marketing.
Right, and marketing is cost prohibitive, even for the studios, because Superman 2 comes out and they have to completely start all over because they don't have relationships with the audience. That's why a lot of the studios have now started to purchase Fandango and invest in Atom Tickets, and they have to own the ticketing platforms. So on the marketing side, this is also this shift in culture and perception. Whereas the startup entrepreneur, the producer who's putting together the financing, thinking they're going to take the film to market, when they go to market, that's going to a market, a film market to sell it. But all this optimism, if you or delusion, whichever you think, that you're going to get your film sold at market, when people don't do that, there's no plan B, because they haven't raised typically the funds necessary to go it alone. and that's a shame. Today, in 2024, going to market should be what startups do. They go to the consumer market. They don't go to the sales market. They go to the consumer market. And so I mean, years ago, Girl Rising is in the audience. They were raising enough funds because they knew that they had access to their community. They had bottom-up technology that allowed people to pull the content where they were, and this enabled them to take matters in their own hands. This was a film in 2012 that was the 4th highest grossing documentary of the year, behind 20 Feet from Stardom and in front of Searching for Sugar Man. I mean, so we've shown for a long time that given the right cocktail of alliances with organizations, this is known in startup land as partnering with supply aggregators. When you partner with a supply aggregator to go to market, you're basically aligning yourself with brands that already have a trusted relationship with their communities. And so as a film, if you're aligned with, we've got a movie called, we don't have a movie because we're not a distributor acquiring rights. I should say we're facilitating distribution for a movie called A Union. That was a great Sundance film about the unionizing of the Amazon workers. And of course, this isn't a film that Amazon wants to show tomorrow, so it's not as though they had a great prospects at distribution, but they've got the United Auto Workers. They've got huge unions that if they're able to leverage and also leverage a technology platform that allows them to directly sell TVOD, transactional video on demand, let's say, or what we have, which is something called partner TVOD, which allows them to stand up the unions to offer streaming. So they're basically creating video stores out of their partners. Well, those folks are going to broadcast and activate their community and then drive revenue and impact. And the payment, it's kind of like an Airbnb. We're a tech platform. We're able to pay out net 7 days. So all of a sudden, this revenue that comes in, you're able to reinvest in your marketing. In addition to that, let's talk about the audience data again. And this dovetails right into marketing. So all of a sudden, you're starting to drive either ticket sales because you're doing theatrical or non-theatrical, or rentals because you're doing transactional VOD, video on demand, or partner VOD. So this week you have, say, 800 consumer purchases. You can, or 60, it doesn't matter. You can take, that's empirical consumer data. Now, if you have a digital marketing team that's buying ads, that's your consumer lookalike campaign. And it's not even guesswork. These are your consumers. So all of a sudden, you can hand this over to your digital marketing team, and they're going to be able to buy ads based on this consumer, and it becomes a virtuous cycle. So then all the money that you're earning and then reinvesting in this marketing campaign builds this war chest of data and marketing muscle that you can then use to as you're thrust into the global streaming platforms. So this direct-to-audience window becomes incredibly critical to your entire distribution journey.
That's fantastic. And I know we're almost out of time, but I really want to make sure I touch on Pay It Forward because I think it's such, so I know I'm skipping a bit, but I also know we are at time. So as far as Pay It Forward, I find it such a fascinating concept. And for those of you who might not know about this, Angel Studios is also known for doing this. And Pay It Forward, you put some money so that folks can go and see a movie without having to pay for it. But you have a very interesting kind of view on Pay It Forward as a concept and how to use it really effectively.
Right. Thank you. Well, so Angel Studios did a self-reported $25 million worth of Pay It Forward tickets where people bought tickets for other people so that they could see the film. Regrettably, they don't have a way of showing people who saw the movie or whether those tickets were used. I'm assuming some of the tickets were used, maybe some weren't, but there's no data there. Because Angel Studios wasn't ticketing the events. So we've also been thinking about pay it forward, and one of the things we did was we codified it into tech, and wanted to create radical transparency around pay it forward, and to boot, because we have a foundation, the money that is contributed to pay it forward is tax deductible. So now we have to be careful about that because we have a foundation, not a public charity. So when it comes to lobbying efforts, that's something that we'll just do pay it forward without a tax deduction. Or when it comes to political activity, we'll do that without a tax deduction. But for films such as City of Dreams that we did August 28th, City of Dreams is a film by some of the financiers behind Sound of Freedom, which is ironic. Another film that is a feature that deals with child trafficking in the United States. There was a $500,000 donation into the Pay It Forward Fund. So this is two bites of the apple if you think about this. Let's just say, and I don't know what their P&A was. Again, I'm not the distributor. But let's just say you had $2 or $2.5 million worth of P&A.
Print and advertising.
Prints and advertising, your marketing budget. And you already know that you're going to spend some money on word-of-mouth screenings or ambassador screenings, private premieres, whatever you call that. That's a cost center. We're able to turn that cost center into a revenue generator. And the way we can do that is in two ways. One, the money, the funds that you put in to pay it forward is a tax deduction on the one hand. And then on the other hand, that money is going to subsidize ticket redemptions. So now you have a big, either you leverage your communities, your organizations, VetTix, which is a great organization with 2 million on their email list. They drive ticket redemptions, or iHeartRadio does a big, whatever you were going to do before for word of mouth, you can still do. And yet the people who redeem those tickets, we're depleting the Pay It Forward Fund to cover the cost of the tickets. That becomes reportable gross box office. So some of that money actually does come back in the form of reportable gross box office. And you get all the data to boot. So Pay It Forward is really, really interesting because it's a glimpse at the future. It's a glimpse at how do we encourage people not just to raise money for their films production, but to raise money for their film's distribution. And is it possible that we could potentially raise money into nonprofits so that money is a tax deduction? Is it conceivable that we can build P&A funds into 501c3s or the like? So these are all new, right, bleeding edge places that we're trying to explore. But we do know the answer lies in not just raising money for your film and then sitting with a slate of films that you can't sell and then having to go back to investors to raise additional money, but actually raising money, including your marketing budget.
I love that. And I know we're out of time. I think that's a perfect place to start or to stop. And Scott, you're going to be here all day so that you can definitely come and ask him questions about this because I think it's a fascinating model. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Awesome.